This podcast contains adult themes and graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you to Podcorn for sponsoring this episode of Beyond Contempt True Crime. Podcorn is the easy-to-use platform designed to help podcasters get sponsorship opportunities on their terms. Podcorn connects podcasters to amazing opportunities like host-read ads, interview segments, topical discussions, and more. With Podcorn, there is no middleman. Podcasters of all sizes can browse and choose opportunities right on the platform. They set their own rates, and they collaborate with brands directly, without any exclusivities. You scroll through the many advertisers, you send them a message, and you tell them why your podcast would be a great place for their advertisement. This marketplace gives podcasters creative freedom and full control of how and when they monetize. Podcorn will support you every step of the way to ensure that you're protected and compensated for the work that you do for brands. I honestly love using this platform, and the people at Podcorn are great to work with. Explore sponsorship opportunities and start monetizing your podcast by clicking the link in my show notes to go sign up for Podcorn. Go to podcorn.com to get signed up today. A commercial-free version of this podcast is available on Patreon for $1 per month. Patreon.com/Beyond Contempt Podcast. I'm Renee, and this is Beyond Contempt True Crime. As promised, today's episode will be a little bit lighter. Lottery fraud has existed for at least 100 years, and the scams have evolved. In the 1980s, there was a well-known incident called the Pennsylvania Lottery Scandal, or the 666 Fix. Nick Perry made replica ping pong balls and weighed specific numbers down. On April 24th, 1980, 666 were the numbers for the lottery draw, and lottery authorities were immediately suspicious. Nick Perry burned the weighted balls after the drawing, but was eventually caught and sent to prison. Fast forward 40 years, we're in the age of computers, and lotteries are run with software. So what happens when a lottery employee has just enough computer network security knowledge to be dangerous? You're listening to episode 23, Eddie Tipton. Eddie Tipton was raised in Texas. While Eddie's siblings played outside and enjoyed all the offerings a rural upbringing could provide, he spent his time indoors thinking about D&D characters or plugging away in his computer. Most of the time, we think of kids who are glued to their computers and video game machines as harmless and nerdy. But Eddie had a rebellious side and was convicted for stealing computer software from a department store. Then, Eddie committed a storage unit burglary, which resulted in a felony conviction. Instead of receiving serious jail time, they ordered him to pay just over $1,700 in restitution, and he received 2 years of probation. Eddie graduated from the University of Houston with a bachelor's degree in Management of Information Systems and Finance. During college, Eddie befriended another man named Robert Rhodes, who was in the same academic program. After college, Robert founded a company called Systems Evolution, Inc., which was a software development training company. With Edward's strong background in computer systems, he was a natural fit. He joined his friend and helped to rapidly grow the small business. In 2003, Eddie was ready for a change and applied for a job at the Multi-State Lottery Association. The MUSL was a nonprofit organization that was created in 1987 by 7 states, including Iowa, so they could pool their money together, which would allow them to offer larger jackpots. The MUSL facilitated games like Hot Lotto and Powerball. Eddie had a felony on his record, which increased the difficulty of landing a job of this nature. There have been different explanations on how Eddie sidestepped this issue. One explanation was that the MUSL never looked into Tipton's past, or their background check only showed his traffic tickets, and that nothing else of substance turned up. Another report was that he owned up to his criminal past during the interview, and while the Iowa State Lottery would not employ people with a felony on their record, the MUSL did not have those same rules. Regardless, Tipton's longtime friend, Ed Steffen, vouched for him. Steffen worked for the MUSL since 2000, as the Chief Information and Security Officer. Eddie left his job at Systems Evolution and took the job with the MUSL. Eddie was kept busy at his new job. Since they were a small organization, Eddie had to do a little bit of everything. He wrote software, handled their firewall and network security, built and maintained web pages, and reviewed security for lottery games in over 30 states. Eddie's brother characterized him as being lonely. Tipton would put in 60-hour weeks and often left the office late every night. One time, he was jet skiing while on vacation. His boss called him into the office ASAP, and Eddie obliged. He was basically on call 24/7. Eddie wrote software that would generate random numbers for the lottery. One of his accounting coworkers casually joked around with him and asked if he entered the secret winning numbers into the computer. Eddie wasn't sure what his coworker meant. The accountant reminded Eddie that since he wrote the code, he should know the winning draw numbers. It must have been at that point the seed was planted, and it wouldn't take long for Tipton to water it. On December 29th, 2010, a person played Iowa's Hot Lotto, guessed the correct 6 numbers, and won a portion of the $16.5 million jackpot. The rules of the game dictated that winners had 1 year to claim their winnings. If they failed to show up, the money would be transferred back into the lottery's budget. If they won more than $600, Iowa law required that winners' personal information be published, including their name, city, and dollar amount won. They would often photograph the jackpot winners with their checks for publicity. The person who won the Hot Lotto jackpot took their time to claim the prize. Over 10 months later, on November 9th, 2011, Philip Johnston from Quebec City, Canada, attempted to claim the jackpot over the phone. Philip declared that he was too sick for an in-person meeting. He provided the 15-digit serial number from the ticket, but then faltered when he was asked specific questions about the day he purchased it. The lottery officials wanted to know what he was wearing when he bought the ticket at the Quick Trip in Iowa. Philip's description of his clothing attire did not match what the lottery officials saw in the gas station surveillance video. Why did he wait so long to claim the jackpot? Philip said he wasn't enthusiastic about winning the money because he was already well off and didn't really need it. The Lottery Association felt something was off and did not validate Philip's winning ticket that day. About a month later, on December 6, 2011, Philip phoned them again and admitted he had not purchased the winning ticket. He explained that the ticket owner wanted to remain anonymous and was represented by Hexam Investments Trust. It was against the rules of the Iowa Lottery for an anonymous party to claim the jackpot winnings. The law was originally created to prevent fraud. Lottery officials knew something was off and suspected they were being scammed, but they didn't have much knowledge beyond their interactions with Philip Johnston, so they sat tight. 2 hours prior to this lottery ticket expiring, on December 29, 2011, lottery officials were sent a package by an Iowa law firm who claimed to be collecting the prize on behalf of Hexam Investments Trust and a New York attorney named Crawford Shaw. In the package was the winning ticket signed by Crawford. This was highly suspicious, as Crawford misspelled Hexam on the lottery ticket. Since Crawford refused to name the owner of the trust, the Iowa Lottery held the ticket and did not pay out the jackpot money. They needed time to assess the situation. Crawford withdrew his claim, and the money was moved back into the lottery's budget in February 2011. In November 2011, the Iowa Hot Lotto asked the police to investigate the situation. Iowa's Division of Criminal Investigation spent 3 years trying to figure out what scam Philip Johnston, Crawford Shaw, and Hexam Investments Trust were running. They were not certain if these people had committed a crime, given all the strange interactions. The investigation was going nowhere, but the one thing they had was the surveillance video of the person who bought the ticket at the Quick Trip in Iowa. On October 9, 2014, police had a news briefing and released the gas station surveillance footage to the community. They were looking for people who could identify the sizable man who wore a black sweatshirt with a hood pulled up over his hat. He chose 5 numbers between 1 and 47, then a 6 number for the hot ball. The mystery man paid for his lottery ticket, fountain drink, and hot dogs, then left the store. It didn't take long for the tips to roll in. Lottery employees watched the video and knew immediately that it was Eddie Tipton, director of the information security for the Multi-State Lottery Association. Those who knew him easily recognized his voice. Eddie claimed he was in Houston, Texas, when that lottery ticket was purchased. But when police examined his cell phone records, they showed he was in Des Moines that day. Ed Steffen, who had originally vouched for Tipton when he first interviewed at the MUSL, was in complete disbelief. They had known each other for 2 decades and took classes together back in their university days. The pair had even built houses next to one another in Des Moines. Eddie built a 5-bedroom, 5,000-foot square home on 23 acres that was worth $500,000. It even had a pond, shuffleboard, pool table, and movie theater. People were often perplexed why a single guy like Eddie would buy such an extravagant place on his $100,000 per year salary. Eddie told everyone that he was lonely, and he hoped that if he built the house, that the wife and kids would follow. Unfortunately, that never materialized. Employees were not allowed to play the lottery per company rules, and it was a crime to redeem a lottery ticket with the intent to defraud and tamper with the system to influence the outcome. They figured Eddie had done just that. Police interviewed Canadian Philip Johnston, the first person who attempted to claim the jackpot. He told investigators that 2 men had asked him to claim the prize on their behalf, and one of those men was named Robert Rhodes. They needed to find the connecting link between Robert and Eddie. Fortunately, that information was only a Google search away. When they checked Tipton's LinkedIn profile, they discovered he was employed at Robert Rhodes' Texas-based software company, Systems Evolution, for 6 years as the chief operations officer. The dots were connected. Eddie was arrested on January 15, 2015, and charged with 2 counts of fraud for attempting to illegally participate in the lottery and for attempting to use fraudulent means to claim prizes. 2 months later, Robert Rhodes was arrested for 2 counts of fraud. Eddie's trial began on April 13, 2015. The prosecution accused him of rigging the Hot Lotto outcome for his benefit. The numbers for the Hot Lotto were generated from computers within the MUSL's Des Moines facility. The prosecution accused Tipton of tampering with a security camera that monitored the draw room, which was the room that housed the computers that generated the random lottery numbers. He was only one of 5 people who had access to this room, and they knew he was in the draw room on November 20th, 2010, to adjust the computer for daylight savings time. On that day, the security cameras only collected 1 second of video per minute. Only having 1 frame per minute made it impossible for investigators to determine if Eddie did anything illegal. There were 2 other individuals in that room with him, but their attention was not focused on Tipton. This might have allowed him the time he needed to alter the random number generator software. The prosecution likely arrived at this theory because Eddie Tipton had always been interested in rootkits. According to Chuck Strutt, the MUSL's executive director, he said that Eddie had given talks on the topic and even kept rootkit software on his work laptop. Rootkits are software that allow the user to gain administrative access to various levels within a computer, and they're generally malicious. This might mean having the ability to reconfigure a computer, execute code, or monitor the activity of users. The sky's the limit, depending on the talent of the rootkit's creator. The prosecution believed that Eddie installed the rootkit malware, which rigged the lottery result for the December 29, 2010 Hot Lotto drawing, and then the software must have self-destructed. This prompted Iowa Lottery CEO Terry Rich to update all their security protocols and software for the draw room computers, as he was certain everything had been compromised. Tipton's lawyer tried to convince the jury that the person in the gas station surveillance footage was not his client, because the man in the video was bearded, and Eddie was not during that time. But his co-workers confirmed it was Tipton's voice in that video. Police also confirmed he was in Iowa per his cell phone records, and spoke with Robert Rhodes that day for 71 minutes. That's all the jury needed to hear, and on July 20th, 2015, They concluded Eddie was guilty on 2 counts of fraud. While jurors agreed that there wasn't a lot of direct evidence in the case, the phone records and the surveillance video had persuaded them. They spent over an hour studying that video during deliberation and felt confident it was Eddie Tipton. On September 9, 2015, they sentenced him to 10 years in prison. His attorney immediately filed an appeal, which kept him out of jail on bond, pending the outcome of his appeal. There were many allegations floating around about Tipton, and police recognized that white-collar criminals tend not to get caught during their first crime. Therefore, he probably committed crimes beyond Iowa's hot lotto. Police believe that there was a lot more to learn about Mr. Eddie Tipton. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. Thank you to Best Fiends for sponsoring this episode of Beyond Contempt. Let me tell you about this rad puzzle game. Best Fiends is a game you can play on your phone, and it's enjoyable because you go through all these levels, solving challenging puzzles that actually engage your mind and keep it active. Many of us are seeking out entertainment, and this is the perfect game to fill that need. The cool thing about it is that it doesn't take up much of your time. You can put the game down and easily pick it up later on where you left off. You don't need an internet connection to play, so it's convenient, especially when your internet goes down like mine often does. Best Fiends updates the game monthly with new levels and events, so it never gets old. Engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must-play. Download Best Fiends, free on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends. Now, back to the show. Police received a tip that Eddie's brother, Tommy Tipton, had won the lottery a decade ago. That tip helped open up a much larger, more robust case against Eddie Tipton. Iowa police contacted the FBI and connected with one of their agents who vividly recalled a memorable incident in 2006 that he called the Bigfoot case. Eddie had recruited his brother Tommy to help scam the Colorado lottery. Eddie's rootkit malware brought the odds of winning from 1 in 5 million down to 1 in 200. Tommy was a member of the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization, so that gave him a reason to travel from his home in Texas to Colorado. He could look for Bigfoot and swing through Colorado to play the lottery. Tommy was nervous to go through with the plan, so he consulted with one of his friends who was a lawyer. The advice he received was that it was not illegal to play numbers given to him by a lottery employee. The advice was worth what he paid for it, which was nothing. On Wednesday, November 23, 2005, there was a $4.8 million jackpot in Colorado. Tommy went there and played 35 sets of 6-number combinations his brother had given him. He also recruited his friend Alexander Hicks and offered him a 10% cut of the winnings. The 3 winners for the jackpot were Tommy, Alexander, and another person who was not affiliated with the Tiptons and won his portion legally. To deal with the money, Alexander and Tommy created an LLC called Question de Suerte, which meant question of luck. This was very similar to the Hexam Investment Trust that was set up for the Iowa lottery scam, which turned out to be a shell company located in Belize. Tommy had to figure out a way to wash their money before he ran it through the LLC. A Texas man named Tom Barkas owned over 40 fireworks stands and always managed a large amount of cash after New Year's Day and the 4th of July. Tom received a call around the 1st of the year from someone asking to do a $500,000 cash swap, dollar for dollar. Tom found this call to be suspicious and wondered what was wrong with the caller's money. The FBI got involved because Tom got nervous about the cash exchange. By the time the FBI looked at the case, they received a call from a local sheriff. The money-laundering Tommy Tipton fell 31 feet out of a tree while he was hunting Bigfoot. He shattered both of his legs and was confined to a wheelchair for several months. The FBI questioned Tommy and wanted to know why he was trying to launder the money. Tommy told them he was trying to hide the money from his wife because their marriage was not doing well. He was exploring all of his options in the event they divorced. Plus, she was a devout Christian and did not condone gambling, which is why he offered his friend 10% in exchange for help with the LLC creation. The FBI felt his story was sufficient and put the case to rest. Tommy's take from the Colorado lottery scam was $568,990. Fast forward back to the investigation of Eddie Tipton in 2015. When police went to find Alexander Hicks, they discovered he passed away from cancer, so they never got his testimony. Now that investigators had uncovered the 2 scams pulled by Eddie Tipton, they continued to dig for more. Police pulled the data from 45,000 winning tickets into an Excel spreadsheet to see if they could link any of the winners to Robert Rhodes, Tommy Tipton, or Eddie Tipton. They had another hit when they found that on December 29, 2007, Robert Rhodes won a jackpot in Wisconsin's very own Megabucks game. Eddie had partnered up with his old college pal, and they formed an LLC called Delta S Holdings to deposit the winnings. Eddie gave Robert a few hundred sets of 6-digit number combinations on a stack of 3x5 index cards. Robert rented a car and headed to Wisconsin, where he stopped at random stores to purchase all the tickets. Robert headed back to Texas, and then found out he won a jackpot of $783,257, which was transferred to Eddie through their LLC. On November 23, 2011, a hot lotto jackpot was up to $1.2 million, and a Texas construction company owner named Kyle Kahn had a winning ticket. He had purchased the ticket just across the border in Oklahoma, and his numbers weren't random picks. He specifically requested the numbers manually and won $644,478. Authorities scanned Tipton's Facebook friends list, and there were 3 people with the last name of Kahn. They collected a list of phone numbers for a Mr. Kyle Kahn, and they cross-referenced them with Tommy Tipton's cell phone records. There was a match. Investigators realized 2 Kansas lottery tickets for just over $15,000 each were purchased on December 23, 2010, which was the same day Eddie Tipton purchased the winning hot lotto ticket in Iowa. His cell phone records verified that he was driving through Kansas on the way back to Texas for the holidays. The winning tickets were claimed by Christopher McCluskey and Amy Warwick. Both individuals were friends of Eddie Tipton. Amy had dated Eddie at one time, but they transitioned into friends. Eddie had Amy claim the ticket and said she could keep part of the money for an engagement gift. Police were satisfied that they uncovered how all the winning tickets were claimed, and they could trace all those people back to Eddie Tipton. But they still weren't entirely certain how he pulled it off, since no one witnessed him infecting the random number-generating computers with malware. The computers in Iowa had been wiped clean, but the code had been left intact in the Wisconsin computers. The forensic computer expert found 21 lines of pseudocode. Tipton's program was called QVRNG.dll, Quantum Vision Random Number Generator. The new lines of code barely took up any space and did not change the file size of the program, so it never raised red flags for anyone. Police knew they had Tipton where they wanted him, and he wouldn't be able to sidestep this piece of evidence. In exchange for a plea deal, they wanted to know every single detail about the lottery scams. Tipton wrote a minor piece of simple code that he partially found on the internet. He put the code on a thumb drive and took it into the draw room. There were 2 computers in locked clear cases. A coin flip determined which computer would be used for the draw. The computer case could only be unlocked with 2 different keys. One key belonged to the draw manager, and the other key was held by a third-party auditing firm. There was a numbered seal that broke when the case was opened. The random number generators worked by taking readings from a Geiger counter in the room, which measured how much of a certain radioactive isotope was in the air. That measurement was converted into a long number, plugged into a logarithm, and generated the random winning numbers. Tipton's code checked on several predetermined criteria. The drawing had to be on either a Wednesday or a Sunday after 8 p.m. Central Time, and it had to be on one of 3 days during a non-leap year, either May 27th, November 23rd, or December 29th. Investigators realized that these dates all fell around the holidays that coincided with Tipton's vacation time. Once the program verified that the circumstances were met, the number generator diverted itself onto another track. Instead of using a logarithm to generate random numbers, the program would restrict the pool of numbers to something smaller and easier to run a lottery scam with. This reduced the over 10 million potential sets of winning numbers down to a few hundred combinations. Tipton only had to insert the code one time. After that, it was approved by the Gaming Laboratories International, and machines containing that code were shipped all over the United States. It took Robert Rhodes a long time, but he finally agreed to testify against his friends Eddie and Tommy Tipton. In exchange, he pled guilty to the Hot Lotto and Megabuck scams in Iowa and Wisconsin and received 6 months of house arrest. He was ordered to pay $409,000 in restitution. In June 2017, Eddie confessed to installing the software that rigged the random number generators and fixing lotteries in Colorado, Wisconsin, Kansas, Iowa, and Oklahoma. In Iowa, he pled guilty to ongoing criminal conduct, and in Wisconsin, theft by fraud and a computer crime. He received no charges for Colorado and was ordered to pay restitution. His plea deal allowed for his brother Tommy to not serve as much time. Tommy was only sentenced to 75 days for felony and misdemeanor conspiracy to commit theft in Iowa. He received no charges for Colorado and was ordered to pay restitution. He served his jail time in Texas, probably to be closer to his children. Eddie was sentenced to 25 years, but he will likely serve less time. Iowa has indeterminate sentencing, which means Eddie could be in front of the parole board after a handful of years. Eddie was sent to Clarinda Correctional in Iowa. On February 4th, 2016, 66-year-old grandfather and financial advisor Larry Dawson sued the Iowa Lottery and MUSL. He won the $9 million Hot Lotto jackpot in 2011 in Iowa, several months after Eddie Tipton's 2010 scam. Larry opted to claim $6 million immediately as the pre-tax cash payout, since he had a wife, children, and grandchildren to provide for. Larry contended that his jackpot would have been $16 million instead of $9 million, thanks to Eddie Tipton. Those winnings were illegal, should have been nullified, and thrown back into the budget. The MUSL failed to adequately audit their game. He sued for $10 million, which was the potential size of the lump sum cash payouts plus interest. The Lottery Association and Larry came to an agreement, but they never revealed the terms of their deal to the public. Larry Dawson's nickname was Lucky Larry because of the luck he found on the golf course. He also found a little luck with the lottery, but some of his effort could be chalked up to persistence. He bought 19 tickets for every bi-weekly lottery draw. Larry did this so he would cover all 19 hotball options. He crafted this plan after reading a book that claimed to have secret lottery winning strategies. A Colorado resident named Amir won just over $500,000 on November 23, 2005. The FBI interviewed him as part of their 2015 investigation into the rigged lotteries. Amir learned about Tommy, Alexander, and their LLC. He believed they cheated him out of the other 2/3 of the jackpot since they scammed the system. Amir had let the computer randomly generate his numbers that day, and he would have won $4.2 million pre-tax. The Colorado Lottery held firm that they didn't owe him additional money since he signed a contract when he accepted his payout. In February 2018, a judge ruled in the favor of the Colorado State Lottery. Both Eddie and Tommy were ordered to pay restitution. Eddie owed over $1.5 million, and Tommy owed over $800,000. Eddie's lawyer claimed he only pocketed $350,000, and the rest of the money went to the family and friends who claimed the winning tickets. The prosecution knew this wasn't true. Eddie and his brother owned homes and properties that were worth a reasonable amount. As of 2018, the Tipton brothers barely made a dent in their restitution payments and had only paid back less than $1,400 between the two of them. When Tommy was released from jail the year prior, he sold 2 properties for $635,000, kept his own home worth $780,000. He owned 5 investment properties that totaled $572,000, and he had joint ownership of a property with his brother valued at over $105,000. Tommy deeded a home to his daughter for $36,240 that was on 5.7 acres of land. Eddie owned a 55-acre parcel with a home in Texas that was worth $365,000. Kansas was still owed over $30,000, Wisconsin more than $400,000, Oklahoma $640,000, and Colorado over $1.1 million. Hopefully these states aren't collectively holding their breath. Eddie admitted that there were a few reasons why he got caught. Tommy's attempt to launder the Colorado winnings, Eddie buying the winning ticket himself in Iowa, and also deciding to buy a ticket in the state where he lived and was known. Eddie claimed he never wanted to get rich. He didn't need the money, and he never imagined he would do anything like this. He painted himself as a wonderful guy, stealing from the lottery to give money to his friends and family. Eddie's attorney said that this did not differ from someone who counts cards at a casino. He wasn't robbing anyone with a gun. He was just cheating the house out of some of their money. The prosecution had a differing opinion. They thought Eddie wasn't a brilliant programmer or a Sherlock Holmes. He was a schlub of a man who had some computer security knowledge, and he used that information to become a common thief. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Beyond Contempt. Please visit beyondcontemptpodcast.com for links to sources used in this episode. Research, scriptwriting, editing, and all audio production were performed by me. If you like the show, please leave me a favorable review in Apple Podcasts. Before I go, I need to tell you about a new podcast called Fetal Abduction. It's a new show from Erica Kelly, who hosts the Southern Fried True Crime podcast, and Haley Gray, who has researched and written for many popular true crime shows. Take a listen, and thank you so much.
Pregnancy is an exciting time, full of hope and wonder, and even trepidation. The addition of a child changes a person's life forever, and for victims of fetal abduction in the United States, their lives were brutally changed in a way they could never have imagined. In this series, we will explore cases of fetal abduction in America, from the highly publicized cases to the little known and every case in between. Join me, your host, Erica Kelly, for Fetal Abduction, a true crime podcast. It's a new podcast where we take a closer look at this rare yet heinous crime. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching Fetal Abduction Pod, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts.